it was because teaching wasn't the first thing that I wanted to do. And then as teaching life went on and the expectations of myself, especially when I was promoted and I had my NQT role and this sort of managerial type role alongside my teaching role. And then I started comparing myself, not just with other teachers, but with other managers, you know, unfavorably.
Hello, my name's Jenna. I'm an online primary tutor, and today I'm talking to Claire about how to quit teaching and become a mindset coach and cognitive behavioural hypnotherapist. I've got it. Thank you very much for joining me today, Claire. It's an absolute delight. We started chatting on Instagram, and I was really fascinated with your journey because it was totally different to everyone else I have spoken to. So thank you very much for joining me.
You're very welcome. And yeah, I can't wait to chat with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, lovely. Well, we'll get cracking with the questions then. So what originally inspired you to become a primary teacher, particularly focusing on early years education?
Yes. Well, the thing with me, I don't know about you, Jenna, but my parents were both in education. So my mum was a teacher. And in fact, when I went into teaching, she was just coming out of teaching. And then my dad was an educational psychologist. So I had this background in education, the world of teaching, the world of being in school and seeing how it all worked. There'll be occasions when I was in school and helping my mum. So it felt very familiar to me. And I wouldn't say I was really encouraged right from the word go. I think that I saw the other side of teaching, right? I saw the, you know, the late night marking. I saw a side that put me off, to be honest. But I always felt it was something that I thought I could do. And when I did decide, when I had my own child, I thought, haha, oh, here's a profession that will really fit in with childcare and what have you. And if you're a teacher parent, you will know it's not always as handy as you think it is. But the other side is that I've always been interested in helping people, wanting to make an impact, really curious about what makes people tick. And I think with my own son as well, I think that I got that experience of helping a young child. And then I sort of helped up in my son's school as well. So I think it was just sort of like an organic process. With regard to early years, I did not intend to go into early years because I saw immediately, from my perspective, I saw how difficult that would be because you've not only got new children as a teacher, you're dealing with new children, but also you are dealing with new parents. So there's a lot of people who have got all sorts of hopes and fears that you're going to have to deal with. I was actually aiming at year 3.
Oh,
And my
wow.
mum actually advised me. Yeah, my mum actually advised me on that. So what was interesting was that due to circumstances, I ended up being offered a reception role. And so I took it because the school seemed like a very supportive school, and they were. But it was a bit of a shock. And so about 3 years in, because I thought I need to know what I'm doing, I actually did start a master's in early years education. I did that part-time, and that was amazing. I learned so much more, and that really helped me with my teaching and then my future career, actually. So yeah, that was sort of I didn't aim to go into early years, but once I was there, I sort of thought, oh my gosh, I really love the curriculum. The children are really funny but insane, but actually much more capable. So yeah, it was an organic process, but once I ended up there, I was really, really happy.
Yeah, I think you either love or hate early years. It's kind of like Marmite. And
100%.
yeah, some teachers I worked with, they'd openly say they were Key Stage 2 teachers, and they openly would say, oh, if the head puts me in early years, I know they want me gone. I know they want me gone because some people are just not suited to early years at all. And it can be quite overwhelming because they don't know what to do with such little people. They don't understand the
Mm,
curriculum as such. But obviously, you mentioned the
mm,
challenges with new parents, and that's very, very true. New parents are very
mm,
anxious and they want a lot of
mm.
reassurance. And when you're a
Yes.
new teacher as well,
Mm,
that can be,
mm,
especially if you're younger, that can be quite overwhelming.
mm.
If you're not a parent as well, you're a teacher. That's
mm,
kind of two things
mm,
you have to balance. So you've
mm.
mentioned the challenges of early years, but what did you like in terms of the positives of early years? A few more of those.
Yeah. Well, I was intrigued, and especially when I did my master's, became really fascinated with early years and the research behind early years children, so how to support them. And then when I was doing my dissertation, I was looking into really how to support young children's dispositions and attitudes to learning. I got to do active research in my class, action research. I apologize. So the more I was finding out about this world, the more intrigued I was, and the more I was getting out of it. And I think it does really help that if you understand that very young children live in the world of the imagination,
Mm.
as long as you remember that and your expectations are around that, I think that you can't be an early years teacher and have any sort of sense of dignity. You have to drop all of that and just engage and just embrace this world that they're in. Um, but I was just hugely inspired by them. They're so direct, they say what they think. And I'm quite a direct person. So I really appreciated being around a lot of humans who just felt very free to say exactly what they wanted. Um, and as I said, I really, really liked the curriculum. I liked the fact that there's a lot of emphasis on the children's well-being and the personal, social, and emotional aspect. I thought that was very important. And the fact that it's play based and understanding about play and how important play was. So yeah, I found that it was just an area that I found absolutely fascinating. And I became more and more intrigued with how to help young children and really appreciating they are just so much more capable than other people were giving them credit for, even other teachers, as you said. So yeah, I just found it a fascinating world. There's lots of patience and tolerance needed though, but I found I had it. It just came. I found I had this patience and tolerance with young children that perhaps I didn't have so much with adults, if that makes sense.
Yes, because you know that they're learning because the first 5 years are so critical in their
Yeah,
learning. And once you understand that, then you understand the importance of early years. Because in my experience,
yeah.
early years in some schools was made very, very formal. Very much they wanted children
Mm,
sitting down,
mm,
writing. And in my experience,
mm,
as the years went on, children coming in couldn't even,
mm.
had never held a pencil, had never held a paintbrush.
Yeah,
So their fine motor skills
yes.
were limited to start off with. You know, they couldn't, if you wanted them to write a sentence according to the powers that be, you had to go way back. There was so
Mm,
much more, obviously, work to do. You said your school was
mm,
supportive. Did they understand early
mm.
years and the role it played?
Yes, I was lucky. It was a two-form entry, so I had a partner teacher, and she was about 2 or 3 years in, and she was very dedicated to providing early years children with the best possible start. And the parents had quite challenging circumstances. So I think the whole ethos of the school, and we had a fantastic head teacher, and that's so important for um, any teachers going in, is that you have a supportive head teacher. So I think from the top down, there was an understanding that helping young children to have the best possible start early on, because research shows that your first year in school sets the tone for the rest of the school life. So making sure you were providing, relative and imaginative and supportive early years experiences. We were supported in that as teachers. And also what was lovely was with our head teacher was that he wanted you to try new things, to take risks. We just went for it. And so we did all sorts of different things. And so yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. I was very lucky with that school because they were so supportive with us. Yeah.
So, as well as early years, you were an NQT coordinator. So, to someone outside of the education
Mm,
world, what does that
mm.
stand for and what does that role involve and how did you find it?
Yes. So what a lot of people might not know is, as well as all the hoops you have to jump through in your teacher training, and I did a 4-year degree, which I'm very thankful for, actually. I think people doing PGCEs, absolute hats off to you. So I did, the 4 years, had all the teaching practices, and could see how important that all these different roles. So I had all sorts of different people in school helping me as a student teacher and then as a newly qualified teacher. So you go through your training to be a teacher, and then you have to go through another role, another year, sorry, but now it's 2 years. So now it's called ECT. So NCT is newly qualified teacher. But I think it's a good thing because some people go through their training and you can sort of slip through the net a little bit. And in that first year of teaching, you have extra observations, you've got teaching standards. So it's just to check that really this is for you. And so you've got this year, you need to pass it in order to then continue on to be qualified to then to be in teaching. And so it is, weirdly enough, I think because a lot of my experience was in early years, and my role as an NQT coordinator really started when I went and taught abroad in the Middle East. So I'd been a mentor in the UK, and I'd really loved that. And I'd really loved helping student teachers and NQTs and what have you. So I'd already got that experience for that role. And then in the Middle East, it was a huge role, actually, because it was a very big school. So we had lots of NQTs. And then we had to find mentors for them. So I would say that obviously you're working with adults instead of children, and that is very different. There is it's very different. You're working with adults, but that people who are new to this sort of new to school, children new to school, teachers new to school, I think that my experience in that and my ethos of understanding that these new teachers also needed to have a really good start. That was important for them. I saw, from my own experience, I saw that where I was supported and where people were expecting me and wanting me to do well, I could see that really helped me. And I can see early therapist role there going on from what I ended up doing. So it's the NQT role was really supporting these teachers through the year, finding them mentors, running meetings, supporting them. But communicating with adults, I suppose, is the biggest difference as opposed to communicating with children, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And what strategies did you use with NQT teachers that you saw were beneficial to them? Obviously, you've mentioned communicating, letting them know that they're doing a good job. Because to be frank, when I started teaching, there was many horror stories. They were like, oh, after the first term of the teacher training, 50% left, they couldn't hack it. And it was kind of like these scare tactics said by people. And it did make you worried and panicked whether you could fulfill the whole year. So again, like, what strategies did you use?
Yes, and I think maybe, to continue on, I think that building a really positive relationship was the most important thing for me, making sure that teachers' well-being was number one priority. And because it was a designated role when I was out in the Middle East and I was given some prep time, I think I was able to do more than what I know happens in the UK, because I speak to current ECTs now who don't get the support that I was able to offer. The other thing as well was that I had a really good line manager. We were really very focused on running this NQT program. We had an appropriate body in the UK who were monitoring us to be able to do this abroad, because you were only able to start doing this abroad from 2012. So we were one of the first schools doing this. So alongside with my line manager, we were very much a case of not just the NQTs, but also matching NQTs to mentors, because we were such a big school. We were able to have this application process where mentors could apply to be mentors.
Teachers
could apply. Yeah. And so, and then I would discuss it all with my line manager, and it was made to be a very, very serious thing. It's supposed to be a really big deal. And so I think that's sort of really trying to support teachers with mentors that we thought might support them in the best possible way as well. I think that was a strategy that really, really helped. And like I say, for me, myself, I was just made sure that they all knew that there was an open door. They could come to me. I was going to be a compassionate listening ear Obviously, if they weren't doing things that were correct, I would have to say that's not, that's not great, but I could also be a mediator. I was just there as a mediator, and very much a people champion, because I know that raising people's self-esteem is important for any organization to do well. So, and the other thing that I did as well was I would provide things like little breakfast meetings or little after school meetings, where we could get together and just chat about things. I would get people in that perhaps they hadn't met in the school, who would do little sessions on their, so people could get to know them. People get to know people in managerial positions. They would come do particular specialist sessions. So yeah, there was definitely early signs, as I said, of me being sort of in therapist mode back then. Yeah.
And was there any particular success stories for you in terms of NQTs that you supported?
Um, I think that for me is that just for me, the success story is that I'm in contact with a lot of these NQTs now,
Oh,
and
that's
they've gone
so
off
lovely.
all around the world. Yeah, they've gone off around the world because I was abroad. So a lot of them have gone off to Dubai. To some teachers go back to the UK, but often when teachers go abroad, they get used to it. And one NQT who he was absolutely brilliant. He was an amazing NQT, and we became really good friends afterwards when he left. And he went on to teach somewhere else in the world, and he met his fiance, and I'm going to their wedding next year. So
Oh,
yeah,
what
it's just, oh,
a lovely.
I know. So it's just been so wonderful that these people who I built relationships, and then just watching them go out into the world. Um, and in fact, one of them is a head teacher now.
Oh,
How crazy is
wow.
that?
Oh my
I know.
goodness. That's so good.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you've mentioned
Yeah.
working abroad in the Middle East. So,
Yeah.
how did
Yeah.
working in the Middle East differ from working in the UK, and how did it influence your teaching strategies and methods?
Yeah. Well, I made sure I was able to have a lot of information about what it was like to work in the Middle East, because actually my own mum did a bit of work in the Middle East. So
Oh,
I was in Kuwait. Yeah, so I was in Kuwait, which isn't like as tourist friendly as Dubai, but it pays really well. And I think that I'd got to a stage in my teaching career by the time I went abroad that I wanted teaching to work for me. Um, but because I also, people who I'd known in the past that I'd worked with my mum, they were then in Kuwait working there. And in fact, one of them was in the school that I went to work in. So I did a lot of research, because it is a bit of a culture shock. There is that the country is very different, the religion's very different, the culture's very different. So you do have to be aware of being very respectful to that. And that's the thing where the shops are very different, but also weirdly enough the same. So the thing that I found, Jenna, was that actually the thing that I was worried about was that, okay, it's a British school, but I'm going to teach early years. How is phonics going to work? How is the British curriculum going to work out there? But actually, for example, in the Middle East, all the signs are in Arabic and English. And a lot of the shops are English in American, the shopping malls. So there's actually English language alongside. It's almost like a dual language book. They've got it everywhere. And so the children, actually, young children, I find, are pretty much the same the world over. They're really funny, they're really nutty, but they're great. They can be great fun to work with, and of course, frustrating as well. It's just obviously the parents are going to be different. And I was also in a private school, so you're up against parents who have got a lot of expectations of children, and how they're going to progress in the school. So I think that it wasn't just a new country, and also the language is different, and the expectations and the culture is different. But in a private school as well can be very different. But also in that way, we didn't have the same real pressure that you get from Ofsted. So we did have inspections, but then when you're abroad, you have different types of inspections, and it isn't as you the accountability isn't as harsh as in the UK, it isn't as demanding there. But also when you're in the Middle East, you're going to get Certainly in a lot of those countries, you're going to get a tax-free salary and lots of sun. So that's a benefit.
And walking into the building, is it like a British primary school if they're teaching the British curriculum, or does it look different?
The buildings themselves, you'd be surprised actually in private schools abroad that some of them look more like English schools than not. Some of the buildings might be look more like a school, and some look more like just like a building. And so ours look more like a building. So the challenge was that for the teachers, and this is where teachers' creativity really comes into play, that especially in the early years, we were all up for making everything, the environment, look as creative and as beautiful as possible. Because also as well, if you're in a country where it's hot a lot of the year round, you know, outdoor learning isn't going to be the same as in the UK. So we tried to make our classrooms as friendly as possible, and have the resources as much as possible that would mimic the sort of teaching that you would have in the UK. But it did have its challenges. But the other thing as well, though, there that I did find a lot of people do find that when you're going abroad, that the British curriculum is really respected, and you're respected as a UK teacher. So that's something that can really help as well.
And you said there was no Ofsted. Now here it's gone insane in terms of Ofsted. You know, every school you're
Yeah.
in, everything centres around Ofsted. Have you had Ofsted yet? Oh no, we're waiting for Ofsted. So you're waiting for Ofsted, or you've just had Ofsted, or you're working towards the next Ofsted, and everything now is done for Ofsted. So in terms of like display boards, PowerPoints, lessons, how they run, how you interact with parents, what you offer. So is there kind of, you said there's inspections, but are
Yes.
they as stressful? Are you working towards them constantly, or is it
No.
more of a relaxed environment?
I think that's the other thing as well that is really amazing for teachers out there, is that you don't have that Ofsted pressure. So there are inspections, and you have inspection teams that come in, but we had plenty of warning. We weren't teaching to the inspections. We knew sort of roughly when they were going to be coming, and that particular year is always that bit more stressful because of it, because you know people are coming in. But in terms of where I was, we were such a big school that I wasn't always inspected every time when someone came in, because literally the team
Oh,
of
okay.
inspectors couldn't even get around everyone, right?
All right.
So yeah, it was in terms of stress levels, that was and that's another thing that teachers really appreciate about this, that you can just get on with your job a lot of the time. Obviously, you've got observations happening within the school, within the senior leadership team. That happens, that still continues, but there isn't that real pressure, this real harsh accountability, right, that you get in the UK.
And do you get much? I've heard that there's a lot of pressure from parents abroad. Did you
Mm,
experience that? Because some teachers I've worked with
mm,
when I did supply, and they'd also taught
mm,
abroad, Middle East.
mm,
The parents they worked with, and they, like you, worked in huge schools, and the
mm,
parents had their personal email addresses, and they were free to just contact them whenever they wanted. Um, so, and these teachers in particular found that quite intense, dealing with the pressure, not necessarily from the school, but from the parents. Did you
mm.
experience that, or was your school
No, that
different?
that was not allowed. That was not personal. Absolutely not. But I think that also the other thing was that you've got a wide range of parents when we're in the Middle East. So some of them were Middle Eastern parents, but some of them came from other countries as well. We didn't have many expat families there, but so some parents had different educational experiences. And so the Arabic schools, the pure Arabic schools, did have a much more traditional schooling compared with our approach. And often that was interesting because parents came with different expectations. So we had to sort of explain to them, no, this is the way that we do things. although some Arab parents who some of them, their English was absolutely fantastic. And they would say, look, I don't want my child to learn the way that I did. I want my child to be taught the British way, you know, and that was really lovely. But the children did have, the other thing about the curriculum would be that the children did have specific Arabic and Islam lessons. So they did have that going. That would be a different thing to the UK, that they would have that as well. But yes, I think when you've got parents paying quite high fees, they can be very, very, as nice as they are, it is sort of very much looking towards, because we had a secondary campus as well. So they're very much jumping to, we want our child to be, sometimes the expectations there on the children, they would talk about, oh yes, we'd like our child to be a doctor, we'd like him to be an engineer. We're like, hang on a minute, this child is only 4 or 5, let's just calm down a bit there. But we absolutely did not have, parents weren't allowed to have our emails. However, we did do more in terms of communicating with parents, for sure. Yeah, that is true. That's true.
So for a teacher just starting out, they're looking to become an early years teacher, what advice would you give them starting out?
Well, the mistake that I see for any teacher really starting out, and just not just early years, is that this attachment of you, your identity, or your self-worth to your teaching role and to your happiness as well you're doing as a teacher. So I think that, and that was something that I tried to sort of explain to the mentors as well, to the NQTs, is just watch out for the role model that you are setting for your NQT. You know, are you going to be setting this role model of busy just for the sake of being busy? Because for everything that I know, is having a strong identity and a strong life outside of teaching is really, really important. That's the biggest advice. The number one advice I can give is, do not lose yourself to teaching. It's an amazing profession. But if you lose your whole identity to it, which is what happened to me, then you can end up burning out from that. So no matter what anyone says, my advice is, you know, is progress over perfection, because there's a lot of perfectionists in teaching. So yeah, those sort of two pieces for advice really there.
I really relate to that, because it does depend on the school you're in. You know, there are schools where staff will all be gone by 4 p.m. and that's encouraged. But then some schools, I remember in one, I got up the courage and I came in early, I got ready to go, and I had my bag on my shoulder, and a teacher walked in and went, "Oh, you're going then?" I'm like, yes, I am. But you're so kind of shamed by other teachers in other schools. Well, why
Yes.
aren't you staying late? And I used to even have questions from other teachers saying, do you work at night? And it was like they were clarifying that, they were justifying the amount of work they were doing at home by checking that. And it was kind of like a weird badge of honour. So, yes,
Yes.
I do agree with you to not, because teaching did become my whole identity. But that was very much encouraged. It was your life. You had to give everything to it. But as we know, that's not reality. So moving on to then, you kind of started to mention it, but why did you eventually quit teaching?
Yeah, I think it was because teaching wasn't the first thing that I wanted to do. And then as teaching life went on, and the expectations of myself, especially when I was promoted and I had my NQT role and this sort of managerial type role alongside my teaching role. And then I started comparing myself, not just with other teachers, but with other managers, unfavorably. And I mentioned the perfectionist aspect. And so within me, this desire to want to do well grew and grew and grew, and never stopping to ever praise myself, or I just got this awful perfectionist cycle where nothing I've ever did really was good enough for me. And so this stress sort of built up over the years. And then teaching started to feel like a bit of a treadmill, this stress of comparing myself to others all the time, but having this mask where no one else knew I was thinking like this, no one else knew I was feeling like this. Everybody else thought I was doing well, everybody else thought I was fine, and the stress of keeping this up as well, and the other thing as well, I think that I did lose a little bit of faith with the system. and it's difficult. Not many countries get it right, really, sort of from my perspective. So yeah, I think the initial thing to want to leave teaching was just this awareness of feeling a little bit disillusioned, aware that I had all this stress building up, but not, just didn't know what to do about it. And the reason why I didn't quit initially when I started feeling this way was because when you're stressed, when your brain's stressed, the thought of making change, the thought of leaving teaching just felt too overwhelming. So I just sort of kept going, hoping, the sort of this thing in teaching, one more year or next year, or I'll just do one more year, on and on, until it just became to this climax of having to leave.
I think you do get to a point, or don't get to a point, because some teachers just take a break and that's right for them. Maybe they have children,
Mm-hmm.
or they just want a break, they want to change, or some people do go. But I do think in teaching, it's kind of encouraged that once you're in the job, you never leave. Because when I started working, there was teachers in the job for 30 years, and that terrified me personally. I was thinking, I don't know if I want that for like the rest of my life. Like, is this it? Because up to that point, you're always like achieving a goal.
Yeah,
Society always encourages you to achieve like school, college, university,
yeah.
job, da 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 da. And then you get to the point, you're like, oh, is that it? I want to do a little bit more than this. But I think you can get to a point, because I got to a point like you initially where I was like, I'm not sure anymore now. But then it took
Mm,
someone else going for me to go, oh, I'm really jealous that they've gone. I need to
mm.
do something now. But what was your turning point, like your final straw where you just thought, right, that's it now?
Yes. Well, unfortunately for me, and this is why I do the role that I do now, and I'm very passionate about the role that I do now, is that, I mean, it was September 2019, and by that time, I'm an only child, and I had two parents in different countries, and that the year before, they both became unwell at the same time. So instead of having my precious holidays to recover, like you new teachers all know this, you need your holidays to recover. I didn't have this. I was then flying to different countries to try and help these two different parents, and having nothing left for me. There was nothing going in the tank for me. And then my father passed, and then my mum, I started to realize that she was showing signs of early onset dementia, and she was in another country with no family around her, just friends. And so I brought her, then I just had to make the decision to bring her back with me to the Middle East and try and teach with her there. And I think this sort of burnout signs, ignoring them, I now know that they were burnout signs, ignoring them and just thinking, I just need to keep going, I just need to keep going. And then it's like you're running on empty, and it's like running a car on empty. Well, eventually the car is going to start to break down, really, truly break down. So this had all happened, and then September 2019, I remember going back into school, setting up my classroom and what have you, which normally I used to find that I really liked, sort of invigorating, used to love all of that. And I just woke up one morning and this voice in my head said, "You're done." And I was terrified. I was like, what's going on? And then it was from then onwards, it was like every will and desire that I had to want to teach started to slowly drain from me, so that it became, every day going to school became like walking through mud. I was absolutely terrified, Jenna. I didn't know what to do about it. I now know that was severe burnout. But literally, my body had been trying to warn me. And now it was like, what, you're going to try and teach full time, really stressed, and try and look after your mum who has got this early onset dementia. Like, do you know what I mean? And I think with a lot of teachers, it's often something that happens outside of teaching that is the straw that breaks the camel's back. And that's why teacher parents often have to have such a hard time. But unfortunately, I would have still continued on and on and on. But then it got to the December of that year, and I went to the doctors about something. I had this little thing on my back that was checked out, and then he saw this growth on my arm, and he wanted to get it checked out, and it ended up being cancer. I had a cancer
Oh,
diagnosis.
I'm so sorry.
So yeah, and I'm completely happy and healthy now.
Oh,
But
thank
it took
goodness.
that. It took that, and then that was my big wake up. Then I was like, oh my gosh, how can this be? Like, I eat healthily, I tried to exercise, but this other voice said to me in my head, it was like stress. Immediately I knew that my lifestyle was something to do with this. And I know from my therapy training that chronic stress, long-term stress, unfortunately, because it compromises your immune system, does cause disease. And if it carries on and carries on, it can get worse and worse and worse. So yes, that and unfortunately in the January I had just about enough time to resign. I had no idea what I was going to do. Initially, like lots of teachers, I thought, oh, I know, I'll do tutoring, and I thought I'll tutor online and I'll travel, and I'd got my mum back in the UK by then. But then COVID hit, so I thought, oh, okay, traveling is going to be out. But this is another good thing actually about where you think there's something that has happened that's, oh, that's a barrier, or I can't do that. Don't be disheartened, because actually if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have got to the therapy part, me getting interested in maybe being a therapist. Does that make sense? If that door had to close for that other one to open.
And how did that door open? Like, what was that door that opened for you that showed you about therapy?
I think I'd been very interested in health and self-help for a long time. And it was like all of the books I'd ever read, all of the information came into my brain, because all the voices that all the don't do it, as in don't leave teaching. Once I'd resigned, they all had to be quiet. And I had this freedom in my mind to think, oh, what might I want to do? And then this little voice that had been saying therapist for years, because I'd sort of played around with that a little bit. And oh, I just thought about it, and then self-sabotage, just shut it down. No, you can't do that. It's going to be all sorts of training, and it's going to be costly, and blah blah blah. So my mind had talked me out of it. But when I got the cancer diagnosis, it was a really sink or swim moment for me. And I think that's when you don't have a choice sometimes to find out how resilient and strong you are, but most of us are more resilient and strong than we think. And it was my sink or swim moment. And so I just had this deep desire in me that I wanted to live and that I wanted to do well. And finally, something trumped teaching, right? Finally, me putting me first was the start of what led me to the therapy training. So I'd already started to find little techniques, like I'd played around doing with positive visualization exercises. I did a little 1 minute positive visualization where I was imagining myself completely healthy. So I started to explore the world that I then went into, like hypnotherapy, all sorts of different type of therapies. But I did know that a lot of the stress in my mind, it was necessary for me to be more positive, because I did know that, when you have some sort of disease or even cancer, that people with a more positive mindset are going to have a better recovery rate than people that didn't. So I was aware that me dealing with my mind and my mindset was going to be a good idea. And it was really funny. By the time I thought, I think I might just really look into some jobs, I was really lucky. My first Google search, and I was looking into therapy and hypnotherapy, came up with a college that I ended up training with. I went on this little training day. I really loved it, signed up. They had live training online, and I was able to do that around my work because we were in COVID and we were teaching online. So it was like, even though I've been going through and was going through such a terrible time, it was like I had a bit of help at the same time. And like I said, me putting me first for the first time in my working life was new for me, but I was determined this is what I was going to do. So having this new approach to life, I think, helped me just keep going. And then the whole therapy world, I just found it's like a new passion. It was like a new passion to me, if that makes sense.
And what sort of training did you do? You mentioned obviously the one type of therapy, but what other kind of
Yes.
training courses did you do? Excuse me.
Yeah.
But also,
Yes. Yeah.
how long did all of this training kind of take?
Yeah. Well, it was really fascinating because it was it's flexible, so you can sort of take as long as you need to. They've got different ways that you can do the courses. My training took me about a year to complete, and then I did another course as well. So there was, what was really interesting was, and it was all evidence-based. That's what I really liked. There was a lot of psychologists on this course. There were a lot of there were teachers and head teachers on this course. It was really fascinating. But there was CBT, so it was cognitive behavioural approaches. So there was that. There was positive hypnotherapy. We did modules on mindfulness, on somatic awareness, that's mind body awareness, breath work, those sorts of things. So I really liked the fact that we had quite an eclectic mix of different therapeutic techniques, because I use that now with my clients. I'm able to offer different types of techniques that might suit different people. But it was all, for me, it was all to do with, I just loved this aspect of it, that the whole ethos was to harness the power of your mind and the imagination to help you make positive change in your life, you know, how to manage and to reduce stress. So it was really a holistic mind body approach. Yeah, that's what I really enjoyed about it. And the way that I work with people is we look at what's really bothering you in that's happening in your life, and we look to see what you can control about it. That's the most important thing, because you can't control often things around you. You can't change the education system. You can't change other people's opinions of you. But what you can do is look to see what you are doing yourself. What's your mind doing? What are you saying to yourself that is keeping and maybe even raising your stress levels? So helping people work with that, so that you can learn how to lift your own mood and how to reduce stress in really simple ways to begin with. And just to start to have this identity, find out who you are outside of your teaching role, and just very, like I said, very small, consistent changes. That's how I learned to help myself. And that's how I learned to help other people. That's the way that I work, and it seems to help them the best.
So you did your training, and then
Yeah.
did you then start advertising straight away? You know, start to build up a social media presence? How did that work?
Yes. So anybody doing anything or thinking about doing anything or going down my route, listen very carefully now. What
I'm
we were
listening.
advised to do, yes, what we were advised to do, and this can work, but a lot of people it doesn't work. So it was all about, which worked for the college, that they needed to have a really good website, right? That did work for them, the whole SEO and all that, what have you. So a lot of us went out and thought, oh, having a really good website is the way that you're going to get clients. And it absolutely, for a lot of people, that isn't the way. So I sort of, in a way, I can see I wasted a year really trying to get this website up and running and thinking, oh, people are just going to find me, clients are going to come to me. In the meantime, I was lucky because other teachers in my school had noticed what was happening to me. They could see how I was really starting to thrive in school, and they wanted to know what I was doing. And so a lot of those initial case studies, who were teachers in education, then became my clients. But initially, I wasn't sure about my niche. I wasn't sure about working with teachers. So that was another thing as well. So um, I didn't end up getting onto Instagram until a year later, and we were keeping in contact with a lot of the people we trained with. And it was another psychologist who I trained with, and she started talking about Instagram. And for me, Instagram really started opening a lot of doors. It enabled me to talk about myself, um, getting your face on camera and being visible and talking about your story is not something a lot of people want to do. That's the next step, really, is being a bit more open about your story. That's really opened lots of doors. Lots of teachers then started identifying with what I was saying, and they trusting me. I think having this, being an ex-teacher, as well as being a therapist, I think that's been very, very helpful, and me being very open about my route into therapy and talking about teachers and the struggles that they go through. I think that's the thing that has really helped. And Instagram can be a very good platform. I find it a very creative platform. I find it it's a nice place to grow a community. I've got like nearly 4,000 followers now. So for like about 2 years, I've really, really been working on that. So how I started out with a website and no niche, and now I'm very like it's mainly educators. So once I decided, yes, it really is teachers that I need to help, everything now is about how talking about teachers and how to help teachers. Although I do help ex-teachers as well. That's grown as well to ex-teachers and tutors as well. So from having really no idea how to get clients, I did get a business coach. That really helped as well. That was my next step. So and that's the thing that I do advise is sometimes, you know, getting help along the way and paying for help. You know, I wish I'd got her sooner. So she really helped. So yeah, it's really progressed over time. What I do now is completely different to how it was when I first qualified as a therapist.
And what's the role of a business coach, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So she was, I think that because I help people with their mindset all the time. So I think that this idea of me being a businesswoman and me being self-employed, having worked for someone, for an employer for all of my life, I'd never worked for myself. And then the whole idea of getting vulnerable and marketing myself and felt salesy and icky, you know, and with a business coach, she enabled me to well, I was able to look at my business mindset actually and look at actually in the same way that I help teachers, I realized I was putting lots of barriers in my own way. And I had lots of thoughts and beliefs that actually, when I looked at them in the same way that I help other people, weren't actually facts. There was a lot of assumptions about if I do this, that people are going to think this of me. If I do that, people are going to think this of me. So I was putting a lot of barriers in my own way. And the important thing was that she just taught me some very easy strategies as to how to connect with people. So, for example, on Instagram or on Facebook, or I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn. But I would say that find a platform that feels comfortable for you and then start growing from then. And I think the consistency, just you know, talking about yourself and reaching out to people. And I helped a lot of people for free initially, so I could get lots of testimonials and then I could trial things. Like the program that I have now, I did a lot of trialing, a lot of research with people before I ended up doing that. And she helped me with that. My business coach, she helped me eventually with producing this self-belief shift program, which I've got now. That's sort of like my signature program. So and having someone who is holding you accountable as well, so suggesting things, understanding that the energetics are important. So me lifting my own mood, me having a positive mindset towards my business was very important as well. So yeah, it was groundbreaking work that I did with him, and it was money well spent.
Lovely. And how did it feel testing your business ideas out initially for free? Was that strange to go from, because as a teacher, you have to deal with potentially 30 plus children a day. Then you
Mm,
have to deal with all of leadership. Then you have to deal with all the parents. And for
mm,
me, in terms of like you talking about mindset, for me, going from teaching 30 children plus to one child at a time was like,
yeah,
and initially I was like, how am I going to fill an hour with a child? I do
yeah,
not know, because I was used to managing. And to be
yeah,
frank, most of lessons are managing the children.
yes,
Um, you could argue how much learning goes on in each lesson, because so much of the time is just simply checking that the children are safe, especially in an early years environment. You know,
yeah,
you're lucky if you get a few observations done,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
quality observations.
yeah,
So how did that mindset change, obviously, like from, you know, testing out your ideas to, oh,
yes,
people are actually paying me for this now?
yeah. That was weird. That was really weird. And initially, a lot of the people that wanted to come back and start working with me, the case study people, and that was another thing, money mindset. So I'd be like, oh, they were like, okay, so what do I pay you? And I'd be like, oh, and you know, valuing myself and valuing my time was something that I had to work on that as well. But
It
the
can
thing
feel
that I
so
found
awkward
was,
though.
yeah, oh, it really does. That's a whole other story.
Oh, but yeah. So
But
carry
yeah,
on.
but the with the one-to-one, I think that the I get exactly what you mean, because in our school we could do one-to-one tutoring after school,
Oh,
and I remember that, yeah, so you could earn an extra bit of money, and I did a bit of it, and I didn't necessarily like it. I could see how I helped the child, but often children benefit from having other children around them. But once I started with my therapy, and it was, it was one-to-one, and obviously because it's a lot of the stuff people say to me is confidential, it's not always relevant to have a group situation. I found that what I really love is being able to get to the root of something. I really like getting to the bottom of something. And when you're working with someone one-to-one, you can really get to the root of an issue very, very quickly. And just like what I was when I was in teaching, I'm very solution focused. I'm very reward driven, like in a good way. I want to help. I want people to do well. And so I think that that's what I found was that working with adults one-to-one was great. It was different to working with children, and we could get, well, you if I went down the tutoring route, I think it would have been the same, building relationship. And I know tutors, and I know that a lot of tutors just do one-to-one, and they really love it. But for therapy, I have done group work before, and I have got the capacity to do that if I wanted to, and at some point I might do. But I do find that the one-to-one and being able to build a really, really good relationship as well with that person, therapeutic relationship, I just find that really, I absolutely love it. So yeah, tell me a bit more about what happened with you then. So do you do one-to-one or do you do groups, Jenna?
I've done both in the past. So I'm
Mm,
now purely one-to-one. I've enjoyed both, but
mhm,
I like that time now with students on a one-to-one basis.
mm, mm,
Um, and I just feel like because I do different lengths of lessons, but the
mhm.
lessons just go so quickly now, and it's so
Yeah.
lovely
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
meet children where they're at,
yeah,
not where the
yeah,
data sheet says
yes.
they've got to
Oh,
be.
yeah,
So that's
beautiful.
quite nice. How do you feel within yourself now? Looking back at when you finished as a teacher originally,
Yeah,
to now in your new role, how
yes.
have you physically and emotionally changed?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is that where I got to at the end of my teaching career, unbeknownst to anybody that thought they knew me secretly, I saw myself as weak and incompetent.
Oh,
And I know that's how much the stress had built up, and this perfectionism had built up over the years. So it was very, very sad that I got, and I feel a lot of compassion for that version of me that had got to that stage. So I think that my whole journey of building self-belief, building self-trust, learning to validate myself, learning to approve of myself, right? Balance all these voices in my mind. Um, put myself first, have a a supportive practice in the morning and the evening. So like in the morning I always do some sort of meditative visualization technique. Then I do breath work. I do a cold shower. Like the person who I was before, I'm completely different now because I know how to challenge all these negative thoughts and beliefs in my mind. I know how to rationalize them. I know how to lift my own mood. And so I think the biggest thing is where I've gone from just not trusting myself and wondering what the hell I could do and scared of making change, to now I'm much more challenge seeking. I'm much more positive. I look to myself and I trust myself so much more because I've got so many skills that I've learned, and I know I stay in my own lane. I don't expect too much from myself. I decided this is what I want to focus on. This is my niche. This is my own journey. I know what worked for me. Let's see if it can work for other people. Oh, it does seem to work for other people. Okay, just stay doing this. And then just gradually keep exploring and researching things that are helpful in the health arena, and then trial them with clients. But it's all very manageable. It's all very, I've got a very flexible approach to my day, which is the complete opposite of the teaching treadmill. I think that's the thing that I really, really love, Jenna, is the flexibility. How about you?
same. I think one word comes to mind for me, and it has recently, is control. I've got
Yeah,
control back of my life,
yeah,
whereas in teaching, the
yeah,
lack of control really frustrated
yeah,
me because I would go in
yeah,
with essentially a to-do list every morning. And as soon as you
yeah,
walk through the door, I don't know about you, but it was either
yeah,
emails, you had
yeah,
20 emails by the morning, you
yeah,
had senior leadership person coming to speak to you, you had a middle leader come to speak to you, you had another teacher come to speak to you, you had a parent come to speak to you. By the end of the day, that list hasn't even been looked at, and it just constantly built up day in, day out. Whereas now, if I wake up, I do get a little bit like, oh, in the morning, I've got things to do. But the difference is, and it's like you say, your mindset, change your mindset. Every day I get them done. They actually get done. Whereas that was just, by the end of my teaching career, it was just unrealistic. But yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying.
And it's so sad. It's so sad. And it was really sad coming back to the UK, Jenna, because when my mum was in teaching, it was a very different world, which was why she didn't see there was anything wrong with me going into teaching. I went into teaching in 2000, early 2000. And then by the time I went abroad in 2012, it had already changed a lot, you know. And then coming back now, and it just seems to have got so much worse. And there's a lot of really, really stressed teachers and a lot of teachers leaving because of burnout, and nothing really seems to be being done. And this is my argument is, and I did work with a couple of primary schools this year, and I don't really, that is a road that I could go down, and I could see that I could reach more teachers like that. But I have to say at the moment, I prioritize my one-to-ones because I really want to get, that's how you're going to get, more results, more beneficial results. But I don't see why it can't be understood. You know, like if you're on a plane, Jenna, you know, when you're on a plane and they say to you, if the oxygen mask comes down, you put it on yourself first. Even if there's a child next to you, you put the oxygen mask on you first. Do you see? And it always felt a bit weird to me because I was flying such an awful lot when I was abroad. And it also felt a little bit like, oh gosh, that feels a bit selfish. Oh, that feels a bit mean. It feels a bit weird that you wouldn't help the child. You wouldn't try and put their oxygen mask on before putting your oxygen mask on first. But this is the thing that I see in teaching, is that I can see money's been put into trying to help children's mental health, but it's not been put into teachers' mental health. Whereas if you put it in the teachers' mental health, you're going to be helping the children as well. It is a win-win. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I saw a report the other day. They'd done a report on head teachers and teachers' well-being, and it was really bad. It was really, really bad. Now, I'm going
Declining
to
every
say
year.
though, going on supply, I did supply, and there were really good schools,
Yeah.
and they gave me a lot more. You know, it showed
Yes.
me that there were really good schools out there that leadership did support their staff. But I think
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
few and far between in terms of, that has to be the norm for every school rather than
Yeah.
just a few, really.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for chatting to me. Just to round up, what advice would you have for a teacher considering leaving? And then where can we find you?
Yeah. Well, actually, I would like to give a shout out to one of my more famous clients. You might know her, Miss More No More.
Oh, yes, lovely.
Yeah. So I got to know Jo more through just being on Instagram, and I found her account when she only had about a couple of hundred followers. And like all of you, I thought, oh my God, this woman is so talented. So I just made friends with her on Instagram. This is what's so great about it. And then I started telling her about this program, this self-belief shift program that I started a couple of years ago. She got interested, and I showed it all to her. And then that's when she revealed that she had all sorts of self-doubts and imposter stuff. Because the thing is, if you don't deal with your mindset in teaching and you leave, it can follow you, right? And
Yeah.
so that's what she realized happened to her. She was tutoring at the time. Um, and so she ended up working with me. And what's great about Jo is that she's not in teaching, so she can talk about it. So I have testimonials and I try and use these people's actual words, but they have to be anonymous. Whereas Jo's been really great and talked about it. And so, yeah, if you want to know more, Jo and I did a little series of interviews. If you go onto Jo's account and onto her YouTube, we did some chats about exiting the classroom. And she's got more relevant experience in the UK. So she did tutoring, then she worked with me, and then she got her second job. And then now she's on her third job now that really is much more her. So she's really been on this self-belief journey. So yeah, I very much encourage you to go onto her account and find those interviews, because there's loads and loads of stuff on Yeah, but just don't rush into it. We talk about an exit plan, developing an exit plan. You know, there's the Pit Pony video in the Life After
Yeah.
Teaching group as well. That's a really good one.
And I think they've updated it.
So
They've done
yeah.
the one as well, possibly a Life After Teaching 2 Pit Pony video.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
would say those two. Be careful about that group if you're not in it, though, because there's a lot of horror stories in there. You know, that's when I realized just how many teachers in the UK are really struggling. But yes, yeah, go check out Jo Moore. Go and check out our videos. We've got loads of info that will help
Yeah,
you.
she's got a really good TikTok account as well. I
She's,
found
she
her on
has. She's
TikTok. Yeah,
amazing.
she does some really good
Did you?
videos.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, she's
she
so
does.
good.
And where can we find you?
So I'm mainly on Instagram as Selfing with Clare. I'm also I am on Facebook and I am on LinkedIn, but you will if you want to speak to me, I also selfingwithclaire@gmail.com, or just message me if you're at all interested in working with me. At the moment, I've got a free action plan with some stress reduction strategies that I can talk you through. So if you're interested, just send me a little message on Instagram and we can set that up for you.
Oh, lovely. And I'll leave all your details down below. Thank you once again for chatting to me. It's
Perfect.
been absolutely lovely.
Thank you, Jenna, so much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Ah, well, if you liked today's video, make sure to like and subscribe to see who else I'm chatting to. I will leave all of Claire's details down below for you to check out. Thanks again.